Hey there, it's Jillian, your guide to all things joy, and welcome to the Joy Journey podcast. Today, I'm so excited to celebrate the launch of this podcast with the person who inspired me to do it in the first place, Kelly Kennedy. If you are feeling stuck or held back by resistance, if you're wanting to make it a bigger impact in the world and you're building either a business or you're launching a project or you want to do the podcast or show up more fully on social media, then I really encourage you to listen to this show. We dive in deep into fear and how real it actually is, but why it's not here to stop you. If you're craving connection in a digital world, you're going to want to tune in. In an age dominated by AI and automation, Kelly predicts the return of human connection as the ultimate differentiator. Now, I don't know about you, but this feels so freeing, reminding me and all of us that actually the one thing that AI will never be able to compete with is energy. And that is what we bring to the table with so much heart. So listen in and get ready to get inspired. Hey there, it's Jillian, your guide to all things joy, and this is the Joy Journey podcast. Oh my God. Okay, let's get started. So hello and welcome to the Joy Journey podcast. I am your host, Jillian Shecker, and today we're celebrating the launch of this very podcast with the man who inspired this very podcast, Mr. Kelly Kennedy, to bring him on and just celebrate together. So before we dive in more fully, we've already been chatting and there's just like so much beautiful wisdom to share today. But I do really want to share because Kelly actually made me cry on his podcast. When he introduced me, it was like the first, I just felt so seen. And I so appreciate you, Kelly. So Kelly Kennedy is redefining the landscape of business development with visionary leadership, game-changing strategies, and an unwavering commitment to excellence and heart. As the founder and CEO of Capital Business Development, Kelly's revolutionized how businesses achieve success in competitive markets. His innovative, results-driven approach has empowered countless organizations to unlock their potential and scale new heights. Kelly's influence extends globally as a creator, producer, and host of the award-winning business development podcast, which is actually where we met, with over 190 episodes. Oh my God. And listeners in 145 countries. The podcast has become a cornerstone for professionals seeking actionable insights, earning countless prestigious accolades, and ranking as a top 100 podcast in 34 countries. That's amazing. Wow. Kelly is exceptional. I had the opportunity to be on his podcast. Again, he made me cry right at the very start. He's an absolute trailblazer in sales and business. And I think from my personal experience of you, Kelly, it's been like, you're one of the most caring and genuine humans I've ever met. He's got nearly 2 decades of experience in coaching, consulting, and executive leadership, and he's passionate about empowering other people to shine through his business development mastery program. He equips professionals with the tools and knowledge to innovate, grow, and excel in their industries. Kelly's impact is nothing short of transformative. From his groundbreaking work at Capital Business Development to his global podcast success, Kelly is shaping the future of business development, one conversation, one strategy, and one success story at a time with a whole lot of heart. His legacy as a thought leader and educator continues to inspire others around the world to embrace growth, innovation, and boundless possibilities. I'm so happy to have you here today, Kelly.
I'm so lucky to be here. Thank you for having me. Like, it is truly an honor to be anybody's first guest.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize that sometimes, but the amount of effort it takes to launch a podcast, to produce it, to get everything set up, it's nothing short of remarkable. And, a lot of people take on that task and they never get to this point, Jillian. So congratulations on recording episode number 1 out of what I'm sure will be 1,000 shows.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we were sharing a little bit beforehand around, how Kelly and I met. And I think I just want to reiterate, you reached out to me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is alive, everyone. Who's not there. If you're in business or in leadership, I really recommend jumping on. But you know how, sometimes, I don't know about you, but in LinkedIn, you feel like you get all of these inbox messages from everyone. And it just feels like AI, actually, speaking of AI, it just feels like these robotic messages of people trying to sell you. And, I think we had just a bit of a hello, nice to connect with you. And then you reached out with a message to invite me on your podcast. And I think because I get a lot of messages asking for a
Yeah.
lot of things, but this one just made me stop and go, whoa, wait a minute. Like, yeah, this feels like an absolute yes. So, I'm so grateful you had me on and we got to chat and now I'm doing my podcast because you literally told me to.
Well, you could have said no.
It's true.
but that's not you, is it?
No. Not when I feel it, not when
Yeah.
I feel the yes, full body yes. Um, so yeah, that first episode we talked about, I think it was my joy journey actually.
It was.
Yeah. And it was just so nice and refreshing to connect with you. I'm really inspired by you. I'm inspired by your leadership because you're doing really big things, but I feel like you are guiding people in doing really big things, in a realm that I am a part of, but not fully integrated in. And so speaking with you and having that conversation, I left our conversation with such a vulnerability hangover. I remember saying to my brother, like, oh my God, I think I called myself a joy wizard.
You did. You did.
Which I am.
I might go with the Queen of Joy, but yeah.
We can have two names. But I think it's the nature of who you are that allowed me to just really like say yes, show up and just be myself. And I would say, and I know we've talked about this too, like the corporate realm needs more heart. The world needs more heart, right?
And it needs more help.
Yeah.
Right. We live in this weird time and you know what, business development for whatever reason has been this like really shrouded and guided and protected area where we don't help other people and we don't share that knowledge with the world. I kid you not, when I got offered my very first business development position, I was like fresh out of college. And I'd been working with the company, just kind of helping with like the office stuff, admin stuff for a while. And my boss is like, "Hey, Kelly, you're really good with people. Like, why don't you just like do business development for us and see how that goes?" And I remember going back to my computer, Jillian, and I had to Google it because I wasn't taught about it in college. I wasn't taught about it at all. Like nobody had told me what business development was. And then when I got in, I realized there was no help. There was no help. There was nothing, no books. Like you could find sales books, you could find marketing books, but you couldn't really find anything on business development specifically. And so you know, I got far enough down that path that in 2020, when it came and I started my own company doing it, I still realized there's a huge knowledge gap and nobody is helping other people. Nobody is helping the next generation. No one's explaining it. And that was where really the passion for the business development podcast came from, where it was like, hey, I can share this knowledge with the world. It doesn't have to cost a dime. And if you follow it, you can grow your business, right? And I've been like, honestly, unbelievable. Like I've been so amazed with the impact we've had and like the listenership around the world. I could have never imagined it. Just like I'm sure right now you can't imagine the impact you're about to have. It's going to be massive. Let me tell you that right now. But you can't imagine the impact you're going to have with this show and the amount of lives you're going to touch and the amount of people you're going to help for completely free with this show. Talking to your wall.
It's not a wall, it's Kelly Kennedy. It's amazing. Yeah, thank you. And so I want to know, what is business development? Like, what do you actually do? I think you started off from where you got your first job.
Yeah.
And if you want to just take us on a Kelly K journey of like, where did you start and where did you end up? And for sure, let's dive more into what business development is and how you might be able to help people and what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay. So what's super funny is I was running as fast as I could from this when I ended up in it, which is funny. I'll tell you the story. As a young guy, I worked on a car lot in my teens, work in high school, and I parked cars. And I got really good at parking cars, but I also got really good at learning how they all worked. And I thought, oh man, I could be such a great car salesman. This is 17-year-old Kelly just thinking it'd be super cool because I love Dodge Vipers and I worked at a Dodge dealership. And anyways, parked lots of cars. And I remember going to my sales manager at the time and just saying like, hey, like I'm almost 18. I want to sell these things when I turn 18. And he looked at me, he's like, not a chance, Kelly. You have no sales experience. You need to go get some sales experience and come back. So literally, like basically forced me to quit that job and go and work at like an electronics store in Edmonton called Visions, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So I spent about 6 months to a year, I can't remember how long, working at Visions, learning like electronic sales. And then I went back and I'm like, okay, I've got it now. Can I do this? And like, this is like 2008, the beginning of 2008 at this time. And they're like, yeah, come on. And then the whole economy tanked.
Unlucky.
Yes. And so I think my car sales career was about 3 months. But you know what? It was long enough for me to realize I didn't want to do it.
Perfect.
Yeah, just long enough.
Live and learn.
So I ended up leaving that and I went and worked part sales at a place called the Gear Center in Edmonton for a while. And that was really fun. And I learned a lot there. And I kind of did sales jobs like that, just like, part sales here. And then I ended up doing like part sales for like a mechanical engine or like an engine shop type thing. And I remember my sister just kind of pulled me aside and was like, Kelly, like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you can do so much more than this. Why don't you go to school? And she was going to school at that time. So I didn't know what I wanted to take. So I just went into business admin. I took a business admin course at a community college and just plowed through it. And it was a tough year, no breaks. It was a 2-year fast track diploma. So 2 years to 1 year. There was like, I think I got 5 days off the whole year.
Wow.
So I went to school all morning. Every night I went to work. I worked at Mr. Mike's in West Edmonton Mall. And every night I basically worked there. So I was in school in the day, working at night. And that was like all year. I got out of that in 2012. And I got my very first job in business admin working with Engrity Inspection Services in Edmonton. And I worked there for 10 years. I absolutely loved it. I helped found that company. I helped kind of build it up. Me and the owner were really good friends, still are really good friends. And I just did that and I loved it. And I loved it because what I got to do was introduce the company to other new companies. And then I also did account management for them at the same time. And so I got to build incredible relationships with clients who became friends and are still friends to this day.
Awesome.
And I just found a passion for that. And I realized, like, honestly, business development is probably one of the best jobs in any company. Once you understand it and understand like what you need to be doing here, it is not hard. But I think it's a big misunderstanding of what it is. And it's a misunderstanding on both sides. It's a misunderstanding on the business on what it is and expectations for it. And then it's a misunderstanding on the employee. And I think a lot of people in business development start to feel burnt out because they have no idea where they're going. And it can be solved, frankly, just by knowing where you're going and knowing how to like reach those goals. But so much of it is misunderstanding. And so what I've kind of been trying to do is shine a big bright light on it and say, hey, it doesn't have to be challenging for the business to know what it takes. And it doesn't have to be challenging for the people to know how to execute it. And if you can get those two things in synchronicity, business development is incredible for both.
Ooh, I just got full shivers.
And that basically takes us to today. And I guess, the reason I left that company, was COVID. COVID came and my boss pulled me aside and he said, Kelly, like, you've worked with me a long time. I don't want to like scare you, but this next year is looking real scary. And I don't know, if all the good business development in the world would help us. So do you have another plan if you're not here next year? That was a hard conversation, right? Like that was a really tough conversation because I had, of course, thought about what would I do if I wasn't here. But of course, you don't like put that to action or you don't take action on that until you kind of get the kick in the ass. Right?
Feet to the fire moment.
Yeah. And so that was it. I got the kick in the ass and I thought, okay, I know what I'm doing here. I know a lot of companies need business development. And here's the other thing. I know they all don't need full-time business development. They just need someone who can get these results for them. And that was it. Capital Business Development was born. I incorporated it on my birthday and we celebrated our 4 years just last week.
Wow. 3 birthdays in one day. You, your son, your business.
Yeah. It's a pretty crazy day.
Triple header.
Yeah, exactly.
So much celebration. I love that.
Yeah. And so I went out on my own. I started doing, contract business development for companies, which has kind of slowly evolved more into like training and coaching, which is frankly what I love. I absolutely love coaching. I didn't realize how much I would love it, but honestly, teaching is my passion. Obviously with the show, I do a lot of teaching and now I can do that one-on-one coaching with companies. And I actually have a proposal out right now for like a really big training contract, which I'm really fingers crossed.
Okay.
Really
I have full shivers again. It's always a good
Yeah.
sign when the Joy Wizard gets the joy shivers.
Absolutely.
I'm calling it in like it's happening. It's happening for you. So we'll have another celebration call
Absolutely.
on your podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll tell you the podcast was a tough one. You know me, right? Like I might be like helpful and like good here. But like honestly, I'm probably one of the most introverted business development people you'll know.
Wow. But you have an awesome you're an awesome person, and you have like the voice for this.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Like when I first heard you, when I jumped on with you, I was like, oh my God, like so pro.
Yeah. Well, it's that post-processing.
No, and I feel like you're so extroverted. Like, anyway, keep telling me how introverted you are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I I have to force myself. So
Yeah.
if I'm going out and I'm doing like community things, I am uncomfortable, like most people. And I
Yeah.
think like that's something that we don't realize is that so many people are introverted and would rather not be there.
Yeah, they'd rather be in their jams, eating
That's right.
bonbons, watching the Netflix.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so much of this journey for me has been facing my fears, right? I don't know what episode it's going to be for you, but you're going to have one you don't like, and you're going to have to question. You'll sit there and you'll be like, should this just be it? For me, it was episode number 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Episode number 3 was almost the end of the business development podcast, and there was nothing wrong with it. There was absolutely nothing wrong with episode 3. It was me. I was really struggling at the time with being public, with being out there, with being like, is this really what I want? Is this really what I want to do? Because you do have to make a choice with this, and your life will never be the same. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's true. Once you're out there and people know you as like a public personality, you can't really go back. Like, you can, but it's not the same, right? And so I had to struggle with that. And, I got over it. But yeah, episode 3 was just about the end. And so it's been pushing boundaries, right? And commitment. Like, I haven't missed an episode in 192 episodes. Not one. Not one week did I have to redo it. And I'm not saying do that, by the way. That's not.
Do you batch? You do one a week for 192 weeks?
2 a week.
Wow, Kelly. No holidays?
Yeah. No holidays. No.
Oh, okay.
No. I don't know how I don't know how I've done it. I've done it sick. I've done it mad. I've done it sad. I've done it happy.
Are you taking Christmas off?
No.
So nothing, just giving her forever.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay, I like the commitment.
Yeah. Well, I think anything you're going to do, and this is tough, and I'm not saying it's always the right answer, but I think if you commit to something, you have to hold yourself to it.
Yeah.
And for me, I made a commitment to all the listeners of the show that we would do 2 episodes a week. Every week.
Way to aim low, not.
But think about it this way. We're just about at our 2 years. And by the time we do 2 years, we're going to have over 200 episodes. I think it's January. The first week of January is our 200th episode of the Business Development Podcast.
Wow.
And there's no way we could have done it if we wouldn't have just held to it.
Yeah. Wow. That's really committed. That's like level 10 commitment. I celebrate you for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about the discomfort.
Oh my
God. So the joy journey, really, truly, I know most people think joy is this like light, bright, shiny experience, and it can be that exuberant experience. And also, joy actually requires us to feel it all. So that's the kind of the work that I do, is to explore the shadow side of joy. Like, we can't have the highs without the lows. We can't numb the pain and experience joy. So part of the inspiration of this show, which you helped to inspire, is really sharing like that inside glimpse of what it really means to lead in this world and what it means to move ourselves through that discomfort. Because I believe leadership, it's not about guiding others. It really begins with the self. And so it's, where are you walking the walk yourself? And I would also say joy requires us to meet discomfort and move through it to get to the other side. So you were sharing about how, episode 3 was this like moment of do or die for you. And so how did you move yourself through that? Like, what did that look like and feel like for you? And how did you kind of move yourself through that? Or did something help you to get through to the other side of it?
You know what? It's really hard. It's really hard to look back right now and say exactly what I was feeling at that moment. But what I can tell you, and what I've learned along the way, is you're going to have bad shows. And there's going to be nothing wrong with them, by the way. They're just going to feel bad to you because for whatever reason, they don't meet your expectations as to what you wanted in that moment. But for somebody, they're going to find episode 3 and it's going to be exactly what they needed at that point in time, right? And so I think we have to remember this as content creators. We are our worst critics. I think we get so scared that somebody's going to reach out and tell us that was a shit episode and that you should have never released it, right?
Yeah. Or not even an episode, even just showing up even showing up, like with all my students and clients, it's not podcasting. It's more showing up on social media. Like, just showing up publicly is so challenging for most people.
And I think so much of it is in our own heads, right? Like, so much of it is that I can tell you, and maybe I've just been blessed. And of course I know I'm blessed, but maybe I've just been very lucky. But I'll tell you, in at this point, 192 released episodes, I think I've had 2 people ever reach out. And the first one was just saying, I didn't like that guest because of one of the companies they work at. And I'm like, okay. And I
Thanks.
think the second one was, Kelly, you talk a little bit too much in the beginning of your show, and I wish you would just get to it a little sooner.
Rude.
And, well, no, actually, I took it as like good feedback. And I was like, you know what? You might be right, because I think I've had that same question in my head. So now we moved our show updates to the end, and we just get into it a little sooner. So
Mhm.
two, in almost 2 years, in 200 episodes, I've had two people reach out with, maybe we could call it negative feedback, and even then, it was minuscule,
Yeah.
right? The videos. So you've seen on social media, I've started doing videos. For me, that is super, super uncomfortable. I've been putting it off the whole time. And I've been being told the whole time I need to do it. Right?
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, I've had some pretty incredible people on my show come on and tell me, Kelly, why the hell are you not doing this in video? Why are you not doing more video? And it was honestly, I didn't want to do it. That was it. I just didn't want to do it. It's like, I don't like video. I don't like being out there in that public way. But I'll tell you what, I've realized that for me, that's been holding me back.
Mm.
And so much of like this journey has been, okay, what am I afraid of? Why am I afraid of it? And how big of an impact is it having on where I need to go? And unfortunately, what I'm realizing, Jillian, is that almost everything that I'm afraid of is literally the thing holding me back the most, right? Whether it be public speaking, whether it be being out there on video, whether it be, just being more public in general. Those are all things that I've kind of shied away from, but I'm also realizing that if I want to take things to the next step, if I want to evolve to the next level of Kelly, this is what I have to do. And so much of the business development podcast has been about facing uncomfortable situations. Maybe not so much even facing them, but running towards them. Because I think most of the time, the things that we're avoiding are exactly the things we need to be facing to get to that next level.
Yes, I love that. I remember once I took a crystal course. I know this does not seem relevant at all, but it totally is. And, the woman, her branding is the witch down the lane. Hi, Mandy, if you're listening. She said, when you go shopping for crystals, don't get the ones that you feel called to. And I was like, what? And I'm called to, the light, bright, shiny shit. Always
Yeah.
the rose quartz and aquamarine and these lighter colors. And she's like, no, you actually need the medicine of the ones that you're resisting. And so now I get like the labradorite and I'm getting so wooey, but black tourmaline, and I have found so much balance in my life by honoring the shadow, which is the resistance. Yeah. So I think for anyone listening, it's around like, what are you actually resisting and what would happen if you had the courage to meet it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And courage doesn't have to be the whole thing all at once. It can be one little step every day, right? Like for me, I really just I do tend to jump in and just do it. But it took a lot of steps to get there. Like for instance, let's talk about this podcast. This podcast I was very hesitant about, just as I'm sure you were. And I bought all the equipment and it sat in the room for like an entire month, Jillian, until Shelby looked at me and was like, Kelly, do something with that or sell it, but we either need that money or we need that show.
Or both.
I have to give a giant shout out to Shelby right now because she is a huge fan of you. And she actually turned me on to you because she has bought the Joy Journals as they have come out. And she's like, I think you should have Jillian on your show. So really, I think we owe that introduction to her.
We love you. We love you, Shelby. Thank you. She's amazing.
Yeah, she really is. She absolutely is. But anyways, yes, we'll go back to it. But yeah, so much of it is little steps, but just taking action, right? It's like every journey, whether it be this show, which is having its very first step, not even its first step, probably it's like fifth or sixth step. But it's kind of having its very first interview step right now, which is going to kick off into something absolutely incredible. Like I have no question, this show is going to be huge, Jillian.
Oh, thank you, Kelly.
So it's just one small step.
Yeah.
But it's that little step that's going to make the next step easier. And so no matter what your challenge is, whether it's being more public, whether it's starting your social media program, whether it's launching your business, whether it's picking up your phone and making 5 phone calls today to benefit your business, or whether it's launching your podcast, it all starts with just one step. But every time you take that step, that first step is so hard. But once you take the first step, the next step is obvious. And the step after that is obvious. And next thing you know, that thing you were super afraid of you're getting comfortable with
You're
it.
riding the friggin' lion. And you
Yeah.
didn't even know it.
Yeah.
May I take a moment to shout out my husband too? Let's shout out our
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely.
So you may see this fine microphone that you recommended.
It's
Okay.
beautiful.
And I know you can roll off the name off your tongue. SM7B.
Yes.
Okay. Sure. SM7B. I never call it. I like list a whole bunch of numbers every time I talk to David about it. But so I was struggling with the tech side,
Yeah.
and I definitely I'm not a tech person, but I smash around. I'm pretty good at smashing around and figuring things out. But with this podcast setup, I was so overwhelmed
Yeah.
because it was like, okay, you could do all this, which was actually fairly expensive. Okay. Or you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this. Like, and if you Google it, there's like 5 million fucking people telling you to do 5 million different things.
Yeah.
What I really appreciated is like you sending me that list that made it feel like it's doable to start with. And then I think I reached out to you on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, what camera should I, like just one random question, which
Yeah.
led you into a whole nother like, oh, now you need this and this and this and this. And I was like, whoa, what? Who? Where? And then I was like, what? An interface? What the fuck is an interface? So I was kind of watching the video you sent me, which was
Yeah.
awesome. And I was like, oh my God. Like I actually, that felt like maybe I'm not going to do this moment. Like I just
Mhm.
felt the resistance deeply.
Yeah.
And then, my husband is a musician and an artist. And I think sometimes I don't ask him to do the things because we have different styles. I'm a let's fucking go. And he's
Yeah.
like, let's wait and think about this and really plan it. He's an analyst.
Yeah.
So sometimes we clash because I'm like, go time. And he's like, whoa time. And I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about here? Never mind. I'll do it myself, But in this instance, it just felt like I'm so appreciative because I let him know like I'm doing a podcast and I would really appreciate your help with this. And I've got people coming on like next week. So this isn't a wait and see. This is like a let's fucking go.
Mhm.
If you're
Yeah.
able to help me, can you help me? And he put down everything. He put down his art. He put down everything to really set me up. The best part is that he had this microphone that you
Wow.
recommended. Like he had lent it to a friend to borrow to see if he wanted to buy it. And he literally was like, oh, I'll get the blah, blah, blah that you recommend. I was like,
Yes.
no fucking way. Like that's exactly what was recommended. So he gave me this mic. He gave me his Apollo twin, which I'm like, oh my God, Apollo, like we're shooting for the moon here. This is another sign. Like all this gear, set it up for me, made it so fun. And
Yeah.
so I just got to shout out David for helping because honestly, it was a roadblock and you and he and all of this support has allowed us to be here now.
Well, let me just say, David, killer setup. She sounds incredible. You did great.
Woo, David! I love it. We're so blessed. We are so blessed, hey?
Totally. Totally.
Um,
Totally.
So Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about and I just want to dive in. I want to hear a little bit about the personal side of things. Like, it's very easy to separate business. And I think in most realms, we tend to show up like as professionally as you can.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm not a
Yeah.
super professional person, but I am professional. And I like to bring a bit of the heart into things like around, your journey and maybe some of the lessons that you've learned in other aspects of your life that you've been able to bring into the business aspect. And, I'm just wondering if you're open to sharing a little bit more deeply about like, what is underneath the Kelly Kennedy? What's
Yeah.
really going on in there?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's been hard. I think so much of the business development podcast journey has been I want to interview people to figure out how they did it, right? Because I've struggled immensely with balance between family life and work. And I've come to the conclusion now there is no such thing. There is no balance.
It's a unicorn. It's mythical.
But I think ultimately I went in thinking I'm going to find the secret. I'm going to talk to so many millionaires. I'm going to talk to so many incredible people who figured it out. And I'll tell you what, I don't think any of them really figured it out. And so many of the people that I talk to are like, yeah, now I have a balanced life. I only work 4 hours a day, but you know what? I've gone through 3 divorces. I don't have a relationship with my son. And it's like, that's not everyone, but it does seem like there's been a lot of sacrifice. There's been a lot of sacrifice in order to achieve the levels of success they had. And for me, I think I'm still on that journey trying to figure out how can I have a great family life and achieve success? And I can tell you, Jillian, it has not been easy. And I still don't have the answers.
Yeah, I so appreciate the honesty. I feel Like, I do say balance is like a mythological unicorn that we're
Yeah.
always chasing and never seems to happen. I've looked at it a little bit more like what does harmony look like and feel like, because it's knowing on this journey as entrepreneurs, like there's going to be the busy phases, there's going to be the slower times, and you could actually get taken out by either if you're really highly focused on it. So it's, can I just allow, like, what is the season of life that I'm in, and how can I allow as much flow and ease as possible? For me, I think we all struggle with this, and I know focusing on my priorities, like instead, because I feel like when you're in business, like we are, like you fucking love it. And
Yeah.
you could probably do it all day long if no one said stop.
Yeah.
And night, right? So then there comes a point where we're like, okay, wait a minute, this actually isn't feeling fully aligned in all aspects of our life. And I think the thing that the new era of leadership to me means we bring all aspects of ourselves along. So I definitely, when I write out my priorities, I don't put business at the top, or client, like, or all the things that I'm so excited about, because it's like, no, I need to remember, like, first and foremost, my energy is number one, because without my energy, nothing is going to happen. So my
Yeah.
vibrancy, and then it's family, and then I plug in everything else after. Because if you just ask me like what I'm visioning this year, it's for sure it's going to be like the impact I'm having in the world. And I think that's the thing that is feeling important to share right now, is that
Yeah.
what I see in you is actually, it's because you're soulfully driven by your purpose. Like, you have a huge mission and vision, and it requires a lot of tending. Well, it inspires a lot of tending.
I really I really love that, actually, because I was thinking this morning about purpose. Actually, literally dropping my boys off at school, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking that at the end of the day, I remember just saying a prayer, Jillian, and just saying, God, I just want to make an impact.
Mm,
Right? Like, at the end of the day, I want my life to matter. I want to change the world in a positive way. And this is apparently the way that I've been doing it so far, right? That
yeah.
doesn't mean that it'll change, but I think everybody, you have to think about what impact are you leaving on the world. And you know what? It all impacts matter. However, whatever you're doing, it's your impact. I know for me, I just wanted to leave a grand one.
Yeah.
And so
You
far
are.
this has been the way, and it's not the way I thought it would be. I
Yeah.
definitely didn't think that my little podcast talking to the wall in my basement when it started was going to have the impact it did. I'm blessed. I'm thankful it has. There's still been a lot of moments where I've been like, why don't I have a bigger impact?
Mm,
Why hasn't it been bigger? Right? Of course, there's always that too.
yeah.
But I am incredibly grateful for the impact we have. And while we're not the biggest show on planet Earth, I think we've done a lot, and we continue to educate and inspire, which is all I could really hope for at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that, and I celebrate it, and I also feel like, when you have big vision, it's also important to remember the magical middles
Yeah.
and all the in-betweens and the little spaces where, legacy. So I think of, legacy a lot. And because it's what we're actually doing, all of us, whether or not
Yeah.
you know it, you're actually leaving a legacy. It's your energy in the world. And so it's okay. You're having a massive impact with all your listeners and clients and businesses that you work with, and also in your family. And I think it's just nice to be able to talk about how tricky it can be to find that balance,
Really hard.
and just
Yeah.
being honest about it and working together on it, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember a hard convo with David around me being gone a lot. Like, if there's a conference, especially like, I love adventure, I love connection. Like, if it's business related, I'm friggin' going,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and or having retreats or hosting retreats, or like, just I love mountains. Like, it's kind of this go, go, go energy. And I was gone a lot last year, and David just had a talk with me around, like, actually just feeling lonely and missing
Mhm.
me. And I had a moment to decide like what this gets to look like, because I don't actually feel we need to sacrifice in order to be successful, especially the things that matter the most to us. And I'm interested in finding a way. This is the joy journey, literally, in bringing all aspects of ourselves along, our family. Like, what does it look like to bring all the things that truly matter to us along for the ride? Because when we get to the end, we want to have them all there.
Yes, yes. And I think so much of like, I don't know, so much of like my mission has been, how do I have both?
Yeah.
Right. Because for me, I wouldn't be completely happy with just family life. And I would never be completely happy with just the business life. It's like, how can I how can I do both? Right.
Yeah.
I'm greedy. I don't want one. I want
You
all of
get
it.
to have both. You get to have it all, Kelly.
But you're right. It's been really hard. And I think I've struggled with it because for me, absolutely, there's a lot of events that I could go to. There's a lot of things like that. But I think I look at it, we have, at this point, we have 4 boys, right?
Yeah.
So anytime I leave Shelby with the responsibility of her life, her busy work schedule, and
Yeah.
then 4 boys, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm just not at the stage in my life where I can just uproot and go to those things in Toronto or whatever it is. Will it come? Probably. But right now, I have a role to play here at home.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Amazing. Okay, share with us next on the Joy Journey podcast. Um, do you have any pivotal moments that you can bring to mind that really shaped where you're at now? Like anything that actually was like for you with me, like you were definitely a inspiration for me doing this today. What were those things that have really inspired you to actually take action and do the damn thing?
Man, that's really hard. That's really loaded. You're right. Like, I'm sure there's lots of moments along the way. I'll tell you one, and I'll tell you one from an amazing, incredible individual who is a fan of the podcast and then later actually became a sponsor of the podcast and has been the whole time. We're friends. We have a weekly call. And I have to say, Colin Harms,
Mm.
he owns a company called Hypervac Technologies in Lethbridge. But he reached out to me as just a listener of the show on episode 21. And a cool thing about episode 21, Jillian, is that only 1% of podcasters worldwide make it to episode 21.
Wow.
I didn't know that at the time, but he sent me this like motivational thing. And I don't think what he realized is that like, I think many podcasters by episode 21 are really struggling with it. They start to realize, like, you realize what is the commitment? How challenging is this going to be? You might look at like the future of what it'll look like and be like, oh man, like it looks like this huge path. It's not, by the way, it's one show at a time.
Right.
But it can feel that way when you're at episode 21. You're like, oh my gosh, like 200's a long way away. But he sent me this like motivational video at episode 21. And I don't think he realized at the time how impactful it was. And I think so much of a podcaster's journey, because it can be very lonely. And, you might not, it might not be for you. I don't know. It's hard to say, but it can be a very lonely journey because most of the time it's just you and a microphone or you and a guest and a microphone. But, a lot of the work falls on you. And so you can start to feel lonely and be like, am I really doing anything with this? And so to have that reach out from a fan or from somebody who you've made an impact with, it really does make all the difference. And it's so cool because at this point, we probably get a message, 2 messages, 5 messages a week of people saying, I found your show. It's incredible. It's exactly what I needed. It helped me get that job. It helped me launch my business. It's helping me grow my business, whatever it is. It's like, okay, all right, that's what this is about. This is like, you can forget why you did it, right?
Yeah.
But you need that motivation. And I have to just give a huge shout out to one of the sponsors of the Business Development Podcast, and that's Colin Harms. And he's been an incredible support along the way. There's been many, by the way. He's just one of many, but he was the first one. So I have to kind of shout him out and say that one message led me to today.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, Colin.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I think, yeah, I mean, I've been doing a newsletter weekly, I think, I don't even know, I think since 2017, 2018.
Wow.
And sometimes the same thing, like wondering, does anyone read these,
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
get a message and someone says like, this is what I needed to hear. So thank you. And it just allows you to keep going. So I understand that energy and I know I'll be meeting it here as well. Thank you for that,
Yeah.
Kelly. Okay. What about, if you're open to sharing, your biggest failure or challenge that is now your greatest lesson?
You know what? I would probably say that my business didn't go how I thought it would.
Okay. Tell
Right?
more. Tell us more.
And you know what? I think what I realized was, yeah, this is going to work. I think what I realized was we have no control over what is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think when I launched my business, I thought I had it all figured out. I was going to offer a list of services and I would put it out to the world and they were just going to want it and eat it up. And that was it. And very naive. I think what I've realized now interviewing like well over 100 successful people is that you don't see the success that you're going to have coming. And I'm going to say right now, you don't see it and I don't see it still.
Right.
Whatever is going to come that's going to be like, wow, where did that come from? it's going to be like that when it happens.
Wow.
So I think what's more important for anybody launching a podcast, launching a YouTube channel, starting your social media, your personal brand, or maybe launching a company is understand that so much of it is just being there.
Yeah.
Because you don't know the opportunity that's going to walk through your door. And guess what? You're not going to be able to see it. You're not going to be able to predict it. It's going to be unexpected and it's going to be incredible. But you just have to be there and you have to be open to it at the time.
Open to receiving.
That's the secret to success long term.
Yeah. Be open to some magic, be open to some receiving, just take the next best steps.
Yeah. And almost like the harder that you try to make that thing you wanted it to be happen, the further you get away from that opportunity. Like you have to really just be out there and be open to the opportunity and not turn it down when it walks through your door because it wasn't exactly what you wanted. I think you'll be surprised. Like the podcast for me was a big part of that. Like I could have never seen when I launched Capital, Jillian. Podcast wasn't even on my mind.
Right.
Like, it wasn't even part of the plan at all. And it has become everything.
When did you launch Capital? What year?
I launched Capital in 2020, right in the middle of COVID.
Okay. Yeah. Woo-wee. You like a challenge, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a challenge because I didn't know what the next year looked like, right? So it didn't really feel like a choice at the time. It felt like a necessity.
Okay. And that's what it's the feet to the fire. And then podcast was launched when?
In 2023. So I only came up with the idea for this in November of 2022. So I was sitting down with Shelby. We were out at a Boston Pizza and we do a goals list. And I was writing out my goals list for 2023. And I just wrote like some kind of public thing, a YouTube, a podcast. I don't know, but we got to do this.
Okay.
And so it was like 1 month later, pretty well to the day, that I bought the domain for the business development podcast. And then from there I bought the equipment and it sat in my floor all of December, almost all of January.
It was almost on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, it was real close. Real close. And thank God I have that person to set a fire under my butt. And it was do something with it or not. And I'll tell you what, Jillian, that night I went down, I recorded the trailer episode for the business development podcast. And I've released 2 episodes a week ever since.
I just got full shivers. I'm so glad that you said, just did it. And so I want to ask like our listeners, what are you sitting on?
Yes.
What gear are you sitting on? What idea are you sitting on? Like, what is that thing that you know that you're here to do, that you're waiting for the right time or maybe actually resisting, that you could actually take that next best step today and get it going?
So many people are sitting on so much content because they're afraid to put it out to the world. And I hand way up, right? Like I've been there, done that. I'm done doing that.
Yeah.
I'm done doing that because here's the thing. Who cares? What if it does suck? Who cares? The next one's going to be great. And the one after that's going to be even better. And the one after that's going to be even better. And even if the one after that bombs, guess what? The one after that's going to be great. So who cares?
That's the best clip ever. Like I'm going to put that on my phone to listen to every day. Like just keep going. Yeah.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Kelly, I want to know what you're calling in for 2025, if you're open to sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. 2025 is going to be the human-centric year, 100%.
Yeah.
We've gone so far the wrong way that it's going to rebound back like a rubber band. And people are going to want human connection. They're going to want phone calls. They're going to want video conversations. They're going to want in-person conversations, right? They're going to want real connection. And I think if you want to stand out in 2025, all you have to do is show up, but really show up, not as an AI, as a person.
The more real, the better.
The more real, the better.
We get to actually release our fear of or like our perfectionism, our fear of failure, our imposter syndrome. We actually get to show up. I think actually, I just got the message. Imperfection is actually what sets us apart from AI.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like actually, so let's just be who we are and show the fuck up and do the thing that you're sitting on. Okay. So one last piece that I'd love to ask you around is, what's the biggest piece of advice that you would give your younger self? Little Kelly.
Yeah. I think so much of it is just believe in yourself and don't worry what anyone else thinks, right? I think I spent so much of my life worrying about what somebody else would think or what somebody else would say that I could have been 10 times further along if I would have just told that guy to screw off.
Bye-bye.
Right? Because you are the thing holding you back.
Yeah.
The biggest roadblock in your way is your own fear.
Yeah.
And so the faster that you can address that and don't don't necessarily say, the fear is bad. The fear isn't bad. It's there for a reason. But guess what? You're not running from a saber-toothed tiger anymore because you have to get up and do a conversation in front of some people, or right. Like you're not going to die. The thing that you're afraid of probably isn't going to kill you. So why don't you just go for it?
Just give her. So what I do want to share around that piece is that you actually supported me in moving through my fear of showing up in this way. I didn't realize it until our conversation. So Kelly invited me on his podcast early spring, maybe winter. I don't
Yeah,
remember. Who are we?
I think we recorded in winter and we released it in late spring.
Okay. And we had a call after the recording because I was just like, so I don't know why. I just felt called to like talk to you more. And that was when you were asking me about my business and what I was doing. And that's when you said, you need to do a podcast. And I was like, whoa. And for the first time, because you hear these things a lot, people tell you what to do a lot.
Sure.
And you hear these things a lot.
They know what you need to do.
Right. But it really landed for me. And you explained why. And do you remember what you told me that day?
Not at the moment, but I probably told you because your message deserves to be heard by so many more people than you were able to do one-on-one.
Yeah, that was it. And then I realized what came up was fear right in that moment, around more being accessible to more people. And for some reason, I feel like, I just have such an amazing community. The Joy Club community is so like loving and authentic. And I feel like they're my family on Instagram and Facebook. And I'm not nervous there. Like I just show up, I'll show up in my pajamas. Like I'm so authentic and it feels easeful. The idea of YouTube or podcasting feels so scary because it just feels like it's a bigger sea. And I think that that's the point. Like what you're saying is like, you can have more reach, more impact, and actually do what you're here to do. So in that moment, I think you walked me through like, and you're meant to be heard by more people. Like it's time to meet this fear. And I love it when I get to see a new limitation because I've worked through a lot of them to be able to do what I do. But when I can see a new one, it's like, oh shit, this means we got to go for it.
Yeah, I know, me too.
Yeah. Right. It's like,
That's where I'm at with you.
But walking through that fear has been so helpful. And I'll just be on, like, I'm bringing the fear along on this journey, it is very vulnerable and I don't know who's going to watch these shows and they might think I'm a weirdo or, a wooey person. But I know when I tap into my heart, to my mission to light up the world like a field full of fireflies, like that, this is a part of it. It's being willing to meet the fear and move through and keep showing up and do the things even when they're scary. And so it's just at the end of the day, it's worth it. And it's the intention, that the deeply planted seed of purpose that's there that allows me to do this and people like you. So I just want to say thank you so much for inspiring me.
I don't feel like I've done much here.
You're like, you got to do this. You told me why.
I might have been a fire under your butt,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you were always going to do this.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of when it was going to happen.
You helped me to tether to my why is what you did. Yeah. And you probably do this. This is what you do. I think it's part of your magic. Yeah. So speaking of your magic, tell us where to find you. What's shaken? How can people work with you? What are the opportunities? Anything that you want to share? And then also just where we can best get more of Kelly Kennedy.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I have a company called Capital Business Development. It's capitalbd.ca. We do full service business development. We do coaching, consulting. I have my business development mastery program, which is really where the passion is now. So if you have a business or you have to grow a business, we can help you establish a business development program. I'll walk you through it. We'll talk about personal branding. We'll talk about your options. We'll talk about how do we do this on a weekly basis consistently that leads to results. So everything we do is results driven, results oriented, and that's what we teach. And then obviously the business development podcast. And you can find that really anywhere you listen to podcasts. Also LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my world. So, like Jillian said in the beginning, anybody who needs to find me, you can either find the business development podcast or Kelly Kennedy on LinkedIn. And I would love to meet with you guys there. Amazing. Kelly, thank you. Thank you. I so appreciate you. It's been an honor, and it always was going to be. And it's great. It's great to be here on show one. And I just want to say, look, if you get a negative message, understand you're the one out there putting your face out there, being brave, showing yourself to the world. Remember, the people that are giving you any negativity, they're probably not doing that. And honestly, they probably wish they could. And it's the fact that they wish they could that brings that negativity out, right? It's more of an envy
Yeah.
than a real hate on you.
Yeah.
So
And I think like if you got trolls, it means you're doing pretty good.
that's right. That's right. For every troll, trust me, you have 20 or 30 people who love what you do and they're not necessarily vocal. And that's the other thing I want to tell you. You're going to have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands and millions of listeners, and probably only 1% of them, if that, are ever going to reach out to you. So understand you are making an impact even though you can't see it. Most people are silent supporters.
That's awesome, Kelly. Thank you.